and gentlemen, welcome to the third podcast you've heard from us in the past week, except this is your regularly scheduled Blueshirt Bandwidth. I'm your host, Joe Fortunato, joined, as always, by my co-host, Eric Cohn. Eric, how are you?
Doing well. The weather's actually pleasant here in Michigan. It's over 50 degrees. Most, if not all, of the snow has melted. It's a little rainy, but all things considered, decent.
It's like 60 degrees out. It's fine.
Yeah,
totally fine.
Great. Lovely.
It's better than what it has been, for sure. As are the Rangers, supposedly. If as bad as the New York Rangers are, if they played the Philadelphia Flyers every game, they'd be 82-0. And by the way, I was going to tweet this out last night, but I decided against it. All of you who were on like the Rick Tocchet is an actual head coach that the Rangers should be interested in train, I hope you all feel very silly right now.
Would you swap position? We talked about this, I think, on the emergency podcast of whether or not you would swap positions with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Would you swap positions with the Philadelphia Flyers right now?
Do I have to take the coach too?
Just full swap positions.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Michkov is really...
Michkov is good, but I hear his conditioning is not so great. I've heard something about that.
Well, he may hate his coach too, which doesn't help. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think so. It could be worse, I guess, is what we're trying to say. So,
could be worse.
Housekeeping, blueshirtbanter.com, $85 for all your ad-free New York Rangers access. $40 a year gets you access to the Discord. You should join there, hang out. It's cool. It's fun. It's a little bit more conversational. It's a good time. But $85 a year gets you all the stories on Blueshirt Banter, including I did a story write-up about the Vincent Trocheck trade that never happened. Tom D posted something today about whether or not Chris Drury has a plan. Spoiler, maybe not. Get covered for me for the Joe's items to consider. He had a couple of my trade proposals suck up there as well. Some Adam Fox conversation. There's a lot of things going on there. You guys should join. $5 a year, all your ad-free access. I believe Eric put a deal out there for all the free subscribers. You can get $10 off. It went into your newsletter email, so you guys should do that as well. Either way, join us, be part of us. Listen to us on iTunes. Listen to us on Spotify. Leave us 5 stars. Leave a nice comment. YouTube.com/BlueshirtBanter. Facebook.com/BlueshirtBanter. Twitter.com/BlueshirtBanter. BlueshirtBanter.com. There's no slash there. Eric, 75th episode.
75th episode. There are 2 Rangers who have worn 75. Can you get either of them? One of them you should be able to get.
Now, see, I can't even think of one right now.
2018, Brandon Halverson. That's not the one you should get.
I was going to say I was not prepared for that.
And 2022 to 2023, Ryan Reeves.
Well, I forgot about Reeves.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Is this the Revo episode?
An episode where like you can talk yourself into things being good, maybe, and it's not going to be that bad, I guess.
The vibes are good.
It becomes a disaster. Yeah, vibes are good.
Yeah, the vibes are good, but the underlying reality is still pretty awful. Because that was the Revo experience, right? It was like he was a guy that you enjoyed having on your hockey team, provided that you didn't spend a lot of time thinking about what he was doing actually playing hockey.
Correct. And it was he was good for the content, good for the social medias. Not really good at hockey. It's fine. The people who knew better knew better. If you know, you know. It's all good. It's all fine. Anyway, we're here.
For fun, noting here, Brandon Halverson appeared in 1 game in the 2017-2018 season. He faced 6 shots. He stopped 5 of them. So his career line with the New York Rangers was an .833 save percentage and a .478 goals against average before moving on to play 2 more games in 2 seasons recently, this year included, with the Tampa Bay Lightning.
I didn't realize he was still in the league.
He's still around. He did not win either of those. In fact, in the game that he appeared in this season, he was in for a grand total of 6 seconds and did not face a shot. He faced 24 shots last year in one game, stopped 19 of them. That is a 792 save percentage.
One of the rare not good Benoit Allaire situations.
Yeah,
Rangers
there's a
picked
couple
him
too. Like
in the second or third round, if I'm not
he
mistaken,
was
right?
a second-round draft pick in the 2014 draft, probably comparable in that sense too. To was it Olaf Lindbaum, who like
Yeah.
we all were apoplectic that he was selected in the second round and then he was never heard from again.
Well, either way, he's here now in the NHL still. Didn't think that was a thing, so good for him. 75th episode. Why don't we drag Charlie in here, even though he betrayed me, and we'll just go from there.
We will go from there with the
Adjust my
podcast
camera a little bit, make it more
Ombudsman
centered for
report.
those of us that are watching.
Okay, no. Yeah, well, all right. Are we done with the maintenance?
I think so.
You're good? Okay. All right. Then we will move on to the podcast Ombudsman Report for Blueshirt Bandwidth, episode 74, where each week Charlie will listen to the latest episode of the podcast and correct the record on anything that we get wrong. Starting with an Ombudsman note. Most of the incorrect statements or predictions offered by Joe, Eric, and Chip were speculation about trades that would come to pass by the trade deadline. Everybody is aware of what trades were actually made by the deadline, and Joe and Eric recapped the trade deadline in the emergency podcast, so I won't go through the trades that weren't actually made in this report. Positive time. At the start of the episode, Eric pondered when was the last time that it was a positive time in Rangers world, especially given the fact that this podcast began before last season. On November 21st, 2024, the Rangers were 12-5-1 and in second place in the Eastern Conference when episode 7 of Blueshirt Bandwidth dropped and the team faced the Calgary Flames in a game that would kick off a 5-game losing streak. JT Miller on IR. After seeming to play through injuries the entire season, JT Miller is finally going on injured reserve. This appears to be the play where he takes a shot to the head, and you can go and look at that in the report itself. Scott Morrow, an offensive defenseman. Eric mentioned Erik Karlsson, John Klingberg, and Tony DeAngelo as best-case scenario comparisons for Scott Morrow. Looking at the JFresh player cards and evolving hockey rate tables, you can see that even in seasons in which they had negative defensive contributions, these players were positive WAR players and major assets to their teams. Shockingly, Tony DeAngelo was the 8th best defenseman in hockey during the 2019-20 season. All that being said, Morrow both projects better than Vincent Iorio and has played better than Iorio did during his extended run with the Sharks this season. Dave Maloney. Chip said that Kenny Albert is carrying Dave Maloney like Adam Fox carried Ryan Lindgren. That statement is insulting to Dave Maloney. Maloney works better as a radio guy because, for all of his faults, only obsessed fans listen to hockey on the radio, and he is one of us. Joe said that you get the NR17 version of Maloney on the radio. The Motion Picture Association rating is actually NC17. Eric said that there's a reason why you don't just put television broadcasts on radio. There are actually a few teams, including the St. Louis Blues, Dallas Stars, Carolina Hurricanes, and Buffalo Sabres, that simulcast their TV announcers as their radio broadcast because they are poverty franchises. Jordan Binnington.
The Islanders are one of those, aren't they? Didn't the Islanders fire a bunch of radio people?
There was a whole thing about that like a season or two, which I tend to agree with. I can't imagine that the cost savings are worth what they're getting for that. Because again, I find it surprising there are that many teams that actually do this. They are just different mediums. And if you were to have Joe Micheletti doing his classic Joe Micheletti, look at what he does right there. It doesn't work on the radio because, you can't fucking see anything because it's the radio. I don't know how those work or why you would choose to do that other than to save some salary money, I suppose.
If you can't afford the radio broadcast, you can't have a hockey team anymore. I'm sorry. These are the
poverty
rules.
Franchise. Yeah.
Yes.
Poverty franchises. Jordan Binnington. As the possibility of Jordan Binnington being traded was discussed, we once again need to point out that he has been the worst goalie in the NHL this season, and by a pretty wide margin. Leach traded to San Jose? The trade of Brian Leach to San Jose was mentioned. Brian Leach was never traded to the San Jose Sharks, only to the Toronto Maple Leafs and Edmonton Oilers. If you don't remember Brian Leach playing for the Edmonton Oilers, that's because he never did. In the last CBA prior to the Great Lockout, there was a stipulation that awarded a compensatory selection between rounds to a team that, quote, lost a Class 3 free agent, meaning a player who was 31 years old or older and had played at least 4 seasons in the NHL. Unfortunately, the NHL forgot to clarify that a player actually had to play for the team that, quote, lost him. So large market teams would trade away free agents on June 30th to small market teams and then turn around and sign the player in July. The Rangers did this 3 times during the summers of 2002 and 2003, trading Mike Richter to the Edmonton Oilers for a 4th-round pick, which was used to select Corey Potter. In 2002, trading Brian Leetch to the Edmonton Oilers for UC Markkanen and a 4th-round pick in 2003, which was Roman Kuchenberg. Don't remember him. And trading Mark Messier to the San Jose Sharks in 2003 for a 4th-round pick that was used to select, do you know, Joe?
I don't.
Ryan Callahan.
Ooh.
Good bit there.
I remember being a child, so I think I've told this story on the podcast before. My dad and I had boys, putting quotations around this. Brian Leetch was my dad's favorite player. Mike Richter was my favorite player growing up. And I remember the internet wasn't really a thing when I was a young child, at least not in the way that it is today. So I saw on ESPN or something that Brian Leetch was traded. And I couldn't figure out why my father had zero concerns about this. And obviously because he knew what was going on because he was an adult. And then it happened to Richter. I could have sworn he went to San Jose. I don't know why that was in my head. Obviously, I'm wrong. But it's funny that Edmonton did this twice.
Yeah, it is.
That they like fell for it and then they fell for it again. Yeah.
Without apparently anybody bothering to clarify.
Correct. Just like, hey, you realize this isn't working, right? It's like, it's going to be fine. It's fine.
No, it's going to be great.
It'll work. Maybe, what's the line in Arrested Development?
But maybe it'll work
maybe it'll work for us. It's like these idiots do the same thing over and over again.
It never works. People delude themselves into thinking that it's going to work, but maybe it'll work for us. Grant Fuhr. While the boys were making their trade deadline predictions, Eric called Grant Fuhr one of the best goalies of all time while discussing Edmonton's goaltending woes. Grant Fuhr was the goaltender who won Edmonton's first 4 Stanley Cups, but it's difficult to give Fuhr too much credit. Of the 5 goalies who had at least 700 starts from 1983 to 2000, Fuhr's contemporaries, Fuhr had the lowest career save percentage. Fuhr finished 3rd in the league in save percentage during his rookie season of 1981-82, and in the 13 additional seasons in which Fuhr played enough games to qualify for the goaltending leaderboards, he never again finished in the top 5 for save percentage, and only twice finished in the top 10. Grant Fuhr was an above-average goalie who had the good fortune of playing behind one of the greatest collections of talent in the history of professional sports, with 6 Hall of Fame skaters in the lineup. In fact, many people would argue that backup Andy Moog was the better goalie on that team.
All right, I have a question about this. It has nothing to do with Fuhr.
Yeah.
I saw somebody put a list up of top 10 goalies in NHL history, and they left Henrik Lundqvist off the list.
That's insane.
Right? That's not just me being a Rangers fan, right?
It's not.
Henrik Lundqvist has to be one of the 10 best goaltenders in any. And somebody in the comments mentioned Lundqvist, like he's better than at least 4 of the guys on here. And some idiot was like, well, he never won a cup. Yeah, it's a fucking team sport. I'm done doing this game, but put some respect on my boy's name. I don't know who you were, but whoever you were that did the fucking reel that I had to see, fuck you.
I do not know how you do not include the guy who is 6th all-time in career wins in that list. Like it's going to be a hard one for me to wrap my brain around. And again, we've had this discussion before, and you were taking a shot at him as I was reading the bit about Grant Fuhr. It's certainly not that Martin Brodeur played behind one of the greatest collections of talent in the history of professional sports. He just benefited from playing at a time where you could play a brand of hockey that only gave up 13 shots in a game. And yes, Martin Brodeur, I still will stipulate that he is one of the best goaltenders of all time, but wildly overrated by virtue of having played at a certain period of time on a certain team that played a certain system that, frankly, if we're being honest, made hockey boring as shit to watch. Now, I get that there's a little bit of cope in there because that is a team that won a lot and won multiple Stanley Cups. I would certainly love to have been a fan of a team that won multiple Stanley Cups throughout the late 90s and early 2000s, but you cannot deny that the Devils were boring as shit to watch while they were playing that neutral zone trap, clutch and grab style of hockey.
Any goaltender that has the amount of time that would be needed to pursue their sister-in-law and
Uncle
then
Daddy.
be a good goaltender as well.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Yeah, tells you something.
Tells you something. All right.
Eric also mentioned that Grant Fuhr started every game for the St. Louis Blues during his first season with them. Mike Keenan was reasonable enough to give Fuhr 3 games off as he started 79 games before injuring his knee in the first round against the Toronto Maple Leafs to end his season.
So crazy.
Maybe this is one of the reasons why my impression of Grant Fuhr is off. I obviously cannot argue with the numbers that Charlie has here, but that season that he played with the Blues, he just played so much, and I
can't even fathom that.
It's so bonkers. And in fact, I think that was the 95-96 season, which would have been his highest save percentage in this list that we've got here, which was, he was only 20th in the league, but a .903 save percentage, which is not great. I'm going to do the Chernobyl thing here. Not great, not terrible. He just played so much, and I think that's just stuck in my mind because I was living in the area and I watched a lot of Blues games because they were on TV consistently. But yeah, 79 starts.
If you all remember, Henrik Lundqvist played 72 games under John Tortorella once, and people were ready to fucking revolt. That is a wild. I never knew that. That is a wild statistic. That's
actually
absolutely insane.
I want to look up here, and that ends the Ombudsman report. I am going to look up who was the backup goaltender, because I think it. No, I know
it was
who it was.
No
it was
one.
John Casey.
There wasn't a backup goaltender.
It was John Casey, who was again a pretty decent goaltender.
That is an absolutely wild. My mind is blown. 79 games.
95-96 was the year that he started that many games. 95-96. Yep. So that was a .903 save percentage. And I'm pretty certain that the backup goaltender was John Casey. Goaltending. John Casey appeared in 9 games. Pat Jablonski appeared in 1. And Bruce Racine appeared in 11. So obviously there were games that, and this was a Mike Keenan special, right? Like pulling the goaltender somewhat randomly. There are obviously games that Fuhr did not play the entirety of, but yes.
Because he was working with no extremities.
79 starts, 30, 28, and 16. A 2.87 goals against average and .903 save percentage, 3 shutouts. He played 2 games in the playoffs that year and before injuring himself. Then John Casey went on to start the next 12, went 6-6. I believe this was the year that they lose to the Red Wings in the playoffs? I'll have to look. Regular season playoffs. Yes, that's the year that they lose in 7 games on the Steve Yzerman slap shot to the Detroit Red Wings.
Where Wayne Gretzky was weirdly on
where it's
the
Wayne
Blues,
Gretzky who turns the puck
gave the
over.
Puck away,
Yeah. Exactly.
I wonder if he would have been invited to the Olympics after that.
Clearly not, right? Because
obviously
one play that costs you something that big clearly disqualifies you from being involved in anything like that. Yeah, exactly.
Well, not like we're speaking from experience or anything. Everything is fine. We did a live podcast about during the trade deadline, probably from 2 to 3, I would say, just about leading into it. Gave some thoughts on the Vincent Trocheck situation. live in real time. I think we had 15 minutes worth of like thinking to do at that point. Circling back to this now, Eric, has your opinion on the Vincent Trocheck not trade changed at all?
Not dramatically, no. I just don't get the sense that there was a good enough offer out there that if I found out exactly what it was, that I would be outraged that Drury didn't take it. I think we all agree the only well-reported offer out there was Minnesota's, which was Charlie Strammel, who none of us were ever all of that high on, and a first-round pick. And it's going to be Minnesota's first-round pick, and I'll look this up right now as I am talking. In 27, so it would be
this year.
Would it be next year? I don't think you can count on Minnesota being that bad next year. So it would have been a late first-round pick. On one hand, yes, accumulate all the draft capital that you possibly can. On the other hand, like I'm not blown away by that.
But you'll be able to. Go ahead.
I still think it's true that the floor for Vincent Trocheck, like I've seen a couple of people say this, including LeBron, that his value is never going to be higher. I think the degree of variation here is not all that significant. So I think you may be correct that his value may never be higher than it was at that trade deadline. As I said on the emergency podcast, I don't think the floor is going to sink all that much. I think the floor is pretty well established for who Vincent Trocheck is, what he is. And I stand by my statement on that episode too, that he is just the kind of guy the general managers love the shit out of, irrespective of their actual performance. And I don't think that there is, I do not think he will start next season with the Rangers. I think he'll be traded before it. I don't think there's really anything that he can do between now and the end of the season, short of, and I'm knocking on wood here, some kind of a catastrophic injury that is going to really affect his trade value. And for people saying like, he's just coming off having won a gold medal, I mean, he largely still will be just coming off having won a gold medal in June. It'll only a few months removed from that. So if it is actually the case that no offer that we wouldn't have lost our minds about if Drury had accepted actually existed out there, then punting on this was the right move. And I agree with you. And we'll get to bigger Drury picture stuff in a bit here. But in the vacuum of analyzing just this situation, you can still hate Drury all you want. I'm not even going to try to argue you out of that anymore, because I think as we have now started to well establish, I think your way of putting it is right, that like he needs to prove my previous defenses of him right, rather than I need to be proved wrong. I'm not going to try to argue you out of any of those positions if you hold them about Drury. But this was the right decision. Punting on this was the right decision. If you're not getting the return that you're looking for, or just one that seems acceptable to you, then punt on that decision, because this isn't a guy that you have to unload because his contract is expiring. This is a guy that signed for 3 full seasons after this, and as we have noted, whose trade protection declines after this season. We were even going back and forth with Chip over text about like what teams could Trocheck include on that protection list. And I think there's a couple that are obviously West Coast teams that he wouldn't have to include because they're never going to trade for him. Like the Vancouver Canucks are the worst team in the National Hockey League. They're not trading for a 33-year-old Vincent Trocheck.
I don't trust they are. Jim Rutherford? If you're Vincent Trocheck, not to go this. So
I actually trust no, but do I think that it's highly likely? Like I think he could run the risk of leaving that one off. I don't know about like Craig Conroy in Calgary either. I don't think he's that great, but I don't think that either of those teams see themselves as justifying acquiring a 33-year-old third line center. But yes, I'm like. Undoubtedly, you can go look to at Chip's winners and losers and what the fuck's the trade deadline. There are a lot of bad GMs in the National Hockey League, Joe. There were just a lot of guys that I don't know how you can look at. Holy fucking shit, Stan Bowman. Holy shit. Like, the idea, I know we're a little far afield now, but I just have to say, the idea of the most consistent problem that the Edmonton Oilers, a team that has been to the Stanley Cup final in the last 2 seasons, have had is inconsistent goaltending. And as much as that is true about Stuart Skinner, trading him for Tristan fucking Jarry,
who's like fighting with teammates,
apparently fighting with teammates, and apparently that this is like a fairly regularly occurring thing, that like teammates don't get along with Tristan. Just like, here's the deal. We're going to take an inconsistent goaltender and we're going to turn him into an even more inconsistent goaltender who also is a pain in the ass to get along with. Brilliant work. And I'm going to just crib directly from Chip here. The Trent Frederick contract is a crime against humanity. Like, Stan Bowman should be tried at The Hague for signing Trent Frederick to that contract. Just an impossible. The best thing that Bowman has to hope for is that there is going to be some kind of amnesty buyout coming in the near future. That's the only way he is getting out of that contract. The only way.
Rolling this back around to Christopher Drury. Or excuse me, the trade deadline, Vincent Trocheck. What am I saying?
Trocheck. Do you have any different opinions about the Trocheck non-trade?
No,
at this
but
point?
I have some clarifications that I think are worth making right now, which is I am in full agreement that Vincent Trocheck's value is probably really high, but I do not agree that his value will be lower in June or July than it is right now. It may not get higher, but there's absolutely no reason. Where it really lays out is, would you rather take a deal you're not happy with today, or would you risk seeing what offers look like tomorrow, is basically what it rolls down to. I know what the reaction would have been if Chris Drury took the Strammel in a 2027 first. I don't know what it's going to look like this summer, but guess what? That fucking offer is going to be there this summer. So I'm going to quote the great Elliot Friedman here. Other general managers do not throw life rafts. And one of the things that I wrote about in the article that you could read if you're a premium subscriber to Blueshirt Banter, member? We want to say member, right? Not subscriber?
Member, yes.
A premium member of Blueshirt Banter is, if you're Chris Drury, you're not working under the assumption that you're going to be fired anytime soon, which I know bothers a lot of you, and to this point is beginning to concern me a little bit as well. I think our sort of about face on Chris Drury has been pretty well documented. But the one benefit you have here is I think other general managers were testing Chris Drury, which I absolutely would have done if I was them, and said, hey, I'm offering you a really good deal for me, which Charlie Strammel and a 2027 first would have been, hoping Drury was going to panic take it. And for being a general manager who on 2 separate occasions now, but most notably back in the days when, you know, the original sin happened with Buchnevich, where he took literally anything for Pavel Buchnevich to simply get him off the team because he thought he was getting Jack Eichel, setting boundaries is really not a bad thing. I cannot stress this enough. Chris Drury making the right decision to not trade Vincent Trocheck does not mean you should be more confident that he's going to do the right thing in terms of return this summer. But you know what taking a bad deal would do. Vincent Trocheck is the only flexible piece the Rangers have that has true value attached to it. There is something to be said. Maybe Minnesota gets fucking embarrassed in the playoffs. Maybe they lose in the first round. And you know what? Bill Guerin's got to convince Quinn Hughes to stick around. How do you do that? You bring in a guy who can help make the team better to give them another chance at the Stanley Cup.
One of his gold medal teammates.
Right. Who are apparently, as Mike Sullivan continues to remind us, very close with one another. They're all BFFs. There are going to be teams that lose this year that talk themselves into the fact that Vincent Trocheck is the piece that they're missing to be more competitive.
Right. This is the side of the equation that people are not as much focusing on. Like all of the analysis, most of the analysis that I have seen focuses on Trocheck's value himself is never going to be higher than it is right now. He's only going to get older. You're getting him for 3 playoff runs instead of 4 playoff runs.
Who cares?
All of that is true. You have to look at the other side of the equation as well, which is we noted on the emergency episode and we'll note again here. More teams, theoretically, will be in on him in the offseason because you will have some of those teams that might have considered acquiring him at the trade deadline who did not win the Stanley Cup, who still see themselves as competitors next year, as real contenders. And just like you noted with Minnesota, may be looking to acquire him for some of those reasons. Plus, you're going to have all of the meaty part of the bell curve teams that are going to be talking themselves into how they can be a contender next year and maybe looking for that veteran piece. Like they think that they're just entering into a real contention window, and you're going to get Vincent Trocheck, a proven playoff gold medal championship performer, and you're going to get him for 3 seasons. So the hope there is that you get more of a bidding war because of more teams and different teams being involved than anything having to do with Vincent Trocheck qua Vincent Trocheck.
It is a far less risky move than I think people are making the assumption of. And look, I get that some of this is also just blatant Chris Drury hate, which, again, I think Eric and I have been very clear of the crow that we have eaten about this. You cannot be of the mind that Chris Drury absolutely needs to get everything humanly possible for Vincent Trocheck and be mad that he stuck to his guns. Because here's the thing. He also doesn't have to trade Vincent Trocheck this summer. I think he should. I think it would be insane to keep him around. But if you're talking about making the leverage play, he could keep him and then see if he can't drum up more value at the trade deadline next year, where you're still getting 3 playoff runs of Vincent Trocheck. Drury doesn't want to be backed into a corner. I think, again, he made the right decision here. Not telling you it should make you overly confident that he's going to do the right thing come June or July. Things get a little crazy at the draft. Teams convince themselves there's something that they're not. There are 0, and I mean 0, quality free agents hitting the UFA market July 1st. You're telling me a team looking to make a difference isn't going to be interested in Vincent Trocheck? There was someone who was saying on the banter, Vincent Trocheck is a 3C. The Rangers are asking for a 1C price. They're never going to get it. It's stupid, whatever. It's kind of what you should be doing if you're a general manager. And I'm not convinced Vincent Trocheck is a 3C on a really good team. A competent team. Yeah, obviously that's the ideal spot for Vincent Trocheck, right? When the Rangers were at their best, he should have been their 3C. That's great. Not many teams have the ability to afford that. It's a luxury. His contract's not crazy. And you don't need teams to necessarily value him as a 1C to put an offer out there that gets them in that type of territory. So it's okay, as far as I am concerned, for Chris Drury to have held the line. I don't think Trocheck's value is going to go down this summer. And if it doesn't go up, you're in the exact same place you were in before. So what does it matter?
You're making an important point there that the price for anything is only what someone is willing to pay for it
Correct.
at any given time. Like I remember when I was younger, just gotten into hockey, collected hockey cards, and I think I had like an Alexis Yashin rookie card or something like that. And you go through the Beckett's guide and you see that it's like, $20 or something. And I tried to sell it to a local card shop, and the guy's like was going to give me like a couple dollars for it. I'm like, it listed Beckett at 20. It's like, yeah, we're in St. Louis. Nobody's going to buy an Alexis Yashin rookie card because nobody gives a shit about the Ottawa Senators here. It's only what people are willing to pay for something at any given moment in time. So while I don't disagree with you that in an ideal world, you would want Vincent Trocheck as your 3C. He's a guy that obviously we have seen can play at a 2C. If you're in a situation where you're playing Vincent Trocheck as your 1C, then you're in a world of hurt and you're probably not seriously thinking about acquiring him in the first place. But the idea is that teams are willing to overpay for those guys,
Correct.
in part because there's competition for a limited pool of assets out there. And you value, in this case, some of the intangibles that Vincent Trocheck brings to your team. And you have identified him as a guy that you think you need to add, and you need to get him over other teams that are also looking to add that player, and that inflates the value. So it's not again, in a vacuum argument that Vincent Trocheck should get a 1C level return. I agree with you in that sense. No, he shouldn't, because he's not that good of a player. But it's, again, compared to what, relative to what else is out there? And as you pointed out, there's just nobody on the free agent market. If you're going to add a player of significance in this offseason, if you are one of those teams that has convinced yourself that you are a piece or two away from being a legitimate contender, you're not doing it on the free agent market because there's nobody there. So you got to make a trade with someone. And in that world, where you still have probably one of the best pieces, a middle six center who just won a gold medal, who is pretty well cost controlled in a world where the salary cap is going up significantly, so you can afford him. You're not going to have that major part of the concern. Yeah, I think you can get more than the return that you would expect for that player in a vacuum.
Can I
This
ask
is
this
not
question?
EA Sports hockey.
Can I ask this question? And again,
Yes.
I want to make this clear. We said this a bunch of times on the live show. I'd much rather be talking about the return for Vincent Trocheck.
I really think that's part of why people are
this.
so upset here, is that this whole situation is just attenuated now. And even as you noted, it may be a year from now before we are talking about the return for Vincent Trocheck. And I get people's impatience with that, but that doesn't mean that it was the wrong decision.
But let me ask this question. If Vincent Trocheck was a UFA this year, how much money do you think he's making?
With a salary cap going up the way that it is,
Yeah.
like he's making like $5 million
He's
on
making
the current contract.
something right now. How much money do you think Vincent Trocheck would get on the open market right now?
8, 9, something like that.
Okay. I think that's high, but probably not. I think 8 would be the top of my limit of what I would expect him to get. But you know what?
But also, like, up against the current crop of free agents, right? Like, I mean, he's going to be the only guy of value if that were the situation.
So the point that I'm making is, yeah, it's a little bit of copium for sure, but it's possible that his value is actually increased this summer, mainly because there's fucking nothing available at all. So there may be teams that are looking to make a big splash that don't want to give Alex Tuch, what, $10 million we think he's going to get? $11 million?
Yeah, he's going to get something ridiculous.
That turn around and then say, you know what, I'll trade for Vincent Trocheck and get somebody at half the price, who has the gold medal shine. All the things that make people love Vincent Trocheck are not going away between now and the summer. I think that is revisionist, alarmist nonsense that, quite frankly, like, Pierre LeBrun knows better than that. That's a way to draw clicks. I'm not worried about what the national media thinks about this situation, to be completely honest with you. I'm just telling some of you it's okay. Like, relax a little bit. It's fine. Take a deep breath. Again, I also wish this was something else. I wish we were talking about a fantastic that Drury was able to get Yurov from Bill Guerin and we're having that conversation. It's not. And it certainly seems like Trocheck is in a relatively good place about not being traded. I do think his son being a little bit more established in the region that they're in and the area that he's in is a big part of that as well, right? Now he doesn't have to move him. I know that was going to be an issue. I have 3 young children. Eric has 2 young children. Like, it's hard. I've had those conversations about moving before. I've elected not to do it. Granted, I had a choice in the matter, but, you know, I understand how Trocheck would probably be a little relieved right now. I also understand how he would want this to go away next year. But it's just take a breath. Just take a deep breath. It's okay. It's okay to admit that Drury made a decision that was probably the right decision in the moment, and let's all just move on. Wait until the summer, see what happens. It can't get worse. The team is already an unmitigated disaster. It's okay. Let's see how it plays out.
I shudder a little
To even
at
say
it
it can't get worse,
get
because
worse.
I've done this before and it has.
Yeah, I would, go back to one of the items that was in the ombudsman report where, we were saying before last season that it is going to take some kind of absolutely unforeseeable, catastrophic disaster for the Rangers not to be a playoff team. And lo and behold, we got catastrophic disaster. And we have another version of catastrophic disaster this year. I mean, I'm just going to reiterate one more thing about Drury that I've said before, which is, and I commend to people the piece that Tom Dinora wrote for us, that was published on Tuesday, so 2 days ago from when you were hearing this, that Chris Drury has no discernible plan. Say a couple things about that. I find it hard to argue with Tom's argument there, that there is no discernible plan. I don't know that that means that there isn't a plan at all, but I think he's right that it's not clear or discernible. Now, one of the problems here is this is not a league where there's a lot of free flow of information. So if there was a plan, it's not as if, and really you don't get this from any general manager, generally speaking, who's going to come out and be like, this is exactly what we're going to do. Like they're not going to tell you that. I do think one of the problems that Drury has is we did not see, but we got quotes from the press conference that he did on trade deadline day. He's not good at that part of the job. He is not good at explaining himself. He's not a great talker. And I think that that is a problem for him. I do think there is something to the suggestion that Chip has made before that maybe you want to bring in and split up the president and GM roles and keep Drury as one of them. The problem there, though, is I don't think you're going to bring in somebody to put over Drury. And I don't think that that is going to solve for a lot of people their problems with Chris Drury as that kind of leader of this organization, because he's going to still be the general manager and still be the guy making trades there. Yes, in consultation with a theoretical Brendan Shanahan or something like that. And I don't know that I see the ideal situation would be him just being team president, somebody else's general manager, and we see where we go from there. I don't think it's very plausible, but I agree that perhaps having somebody else there who can do some of the things like speak to the media that Chris Drury is just clearly not good at, I think would be a benefit. And the last thing is, I can't get away from this. I said this several episodes ago, that everything Drury has done, if I examine the vast majority of those moves in a vacuum, they're fine. Some of them are even good. And yet, you cannot escape the larger meta-narrative, which is that this was a team that went to the Eastern Conference Final twice in 3 seasons, and that now is at the bottom of the National Hockey League, and that he has presided over that. And I think the indictment you can make there is, while any of those individual trades or a good number of those individual moves are defensible and fine in and of themselves, they are less than the sum of their parts. He did not create any excess value there. And I think that that's true. Not all of those situations were completely his fault. I still am apoplectic at the extent to which people are willing to let the players off the hook for what happened last year and their role in all of that. But yeah, I cannot escape the larger narrative there that Chris Drury has presided over a precipitous decline in the quality of this team as he has seemingly sought to improve it. And that is his responsibility. And the blame for that lies at his feet at the end of the day. As you pointed out, perhaps in that sense, the only silver lining to the fact that he's not going anywhere anytime soon is that he knows he's not going anywhere anytime soon and is willing to step back and not make the kind of panic moves that a GM trying to save their job is going to make. That's fine. It still does not give me a lot of confidence in the future direction of this team. And I have to agree with Tom that I can't clearly discern a plan here. It would be helpful to get a sense of what it is. I don't expect that to come anytime soon. It's not going to become being directly explained. We're going to have to piece together a vision. And from what we have seen, I don't know how to say what that vision is.
So this is a good transition actually into sort of where the Rangers are right now and the idea of patience, right? One of the things that came about was there was interest in Braden Schneider. Rangers made the decision to not make a trade with him and that they're going to punt that decision to the summer as well. Based on some of the returns that were spinning around, it does lead me to believe that there will be interest in Schneider and maybe significant interest in him as a cost-controlled 24-year-old right-handed defenseman. There's an opportunity here for Drury to utilize Schneider if the Rangers do want to move on from him, and it certainly appears that they do, at least from what we've seen, and Trocheck to bring back some, pieces here, right? The other thing is, and I'm saying this is half a joke. You and I were talking about it a little bit before the show. One of the things that I heard from a couple of prospect people who I respect about some of Alexis Lafreniere's struggles was that the Rangers that when he was in the juniors, he was the guy. And there are players that struggle not being the guy. And the Rangers basically giving him bottom 6 minutes where he had to earn it, instead of giving him an opportunity to kind of step into the AHL and be more of the guy. The way that the Rangers allowed Gabe Perreault to be the guy for Hartford hurt him. I'm half tongue-in-cheek when I say, was Artemi Panarin holding back Alexis Lafrenière? But we have seen a totally different Alexis Lafrenière. Believe he has 10 points in his last 8 games. He had a goal and an assist last night. He looked good on the power play. Look, we have seen plenty of evidence that shows that Alexis Lafrenière, not necessarily the play driver we were hoping he would be. But he's playing some of the best defensive hockey of his life. His 200-foot game has never been better. And now he's actually putting up points and doing it too. There's a value there. Rather than taking a Shane Wright, 50 cents on the dollar change of scenery trade, I put Alexis Lafrenière in the is broken but would be fun to fix category of my trade tiers. And Chris Drury talked about how it might make a little bit more sense to be patient and see if he can extract more value out of Lafrenière. I actually don't know if he said that or if it was reported from the media that was what his thought process was, just to avoid getting charlied. But that to me is one of the benefits of patience. Where if you can get Alexis Lafrenière to a place where he's playing competitive hockey, where he gives a shit. There was a video. He was one of the first people on the ice doing work in front of the net yesterday. And somebody, and I don't remember who it was, I think it was somebody from the banter, was making the comment that it's sad that this is like a rarity. Like, it's good to see, but this should not be a rarity that's worth noting. There's no way the Colorado Avalanche media is saying, well, Nathan McKinnon's out there again. And we need more of that from Lafrenière. He made a comment about how he's starting to take some of these things a little bit more seriously. Fucking good, man. Wake the fuck up. But if the Rangers could get more out of him, Perreault is getting thrown right into the limelight. And he's succeeding expectations. He had a goal and an assist last night. That behind-the-back pass to Mika Zibanejad is something most players wouldn't even attempt, let alone pull off. He's mentioned how the game is starting to slow down for him a little bit. talking about how Mika and Trocheck, specifically Mika these days, are really helping him. That's not a shot at Trocheck, by the way. Just mentioned Mika's manager after the game. I'm feeling much better about the Gabe Perreault situation, just with the fact that he's being forced to play on first power play top line minutes. It's what you want to see. And he's rewarding Mike Sullivan for that right now. But not being forced from a general manager who's literally just trying to do anything he can to survive, to keep his job, may actually bring out some positive situations. If you're talking about a general manager that, like Joe Shane for the Giants, right? On his last leg, he comes in. Honestly, there's an argument to be made that he doesn't even have power within the Giants anymore anyway. But if you have a general manager who thinks he's going to get fired if the team doesn't turn around immediately, I don't know if, Trocheck, they're not just taking a bad deal for Trocheck and they're not just trading Lafrenière for whatever they can get just to make things different. It's like the Family Guy quote we want all the time. Oh, you don't want, you just want different. Some of this is copium. Absolutely. But I'm optimistically looking at what could be a benefit for the New York Rangers here.
I think a couple things about Lafrenière can be true simultaneously. And that is Lafrenière is still a useful hockey player.
Even at his worst.
Even at his worst, I think is still a useful hockey player. That his value has probably never been lower from a trade perspective. So if you are going to move him, probably the best case scenario is something like that Shane Wright change of scenery deal, which is just a my problem for your problem. And maybe it works out better for each of us in just trying a different problem on for size. I think that is also true. And there's just probably not a deal out there that you send Lafrenière out that's actually making the team better. So I think all of that is entirely fair. I think there is merit to the point that you're making about, there's always the joke of, anybody on a line with Wayne Gretzky would probably score at least 30 goals. We made the joke too about Sleeve McDykel being the winger for Sidney Crosby and probably ending up with 30 goals and 70 points, even though you've never heard of him before. And there's something about kind of no-name guys like that are willing to be passengers on a line with an all-time great player. And perhaps that was just not the best role for Alexis Lafrenière. I still have my hesitations about accepting the narrative that Alexis Lafrenière can, in the National Hockey League, step in and be the guy, or at least one of the main guys. I'm going to need to see what is going on right now, a lot more of it, and consistently through the end of the season and into next season before I am willing to start embracing that possibility. I would love nothing more than to see it. On the other hand, a lot of those points were being made on the Twitters by Adam Herman, who I think is right about them. And simultaneously, I don't think you can act apoplectic that people are dissatisfied with Alexis Lafrenière and just try to say, it was like, yeah, set aside the fact that he was a first overall draft pick. He is a useful hockey player and yada, 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 yada. I think all of that can be true. And yeah, you're going to have a very hard time getting people to set aside the fact that he was a first overall draft pick, because what you're expecting at a first overall draft pick is not what you have gotten in Alexis Lafrenière. You're expecting somebody who is franchise altering, and Alexis Lafrenière has not shown us that he is a franchise-altering kind of player. So I think you need to come a little bit towards fans in that sense and understanding, at least articulating a base-level understanding that was like, yes, he has been a disappointment. There's redeeming value in the guy. This is not to say that just because he is not been what he was promised to be, that you should dump him for 50 or 25 cents on the dollar, that you accept a change of scenery trade for Shane Wright. All the things can still be true, and you can still admit that it does matter that Alexis Lafrenière, the first overall pick, has not delivered like a first overall pick is expected to, and has not been the meaningful difference maker that the Rangers needed from the only time in NHL history that they have drafted in that position. I think all of these things can be true simultaneously, and we should be able to admit that.
Yeah, but the only point that I want to make about this though is the takeaway from that. There were a bunch of people, I think Phil was one of them, who in that conversation was like, you can't ignore the fact that he was a first overall pick and he's not. Like, you can't just wash that away. Uh, it depends on the conversation you're having. In a vacuum, sure, you're expecting him to be more. I don't disagree with that. The point that you made at the end, though, is the most important point, which is if you can get Lafrenière to get to a place where he is a 50 to 60 point player that plays a really solid 200-foot game, not what you want out of a first overall pick, still a valuable player that you shouldn't be opposed to.
Sure.
So,
but expectations matter.
Yeah, that's more where I'm look, again, God willing, Alexis Lafrenière turns up the heat, turns into this incredible player that we're all talking about. And it's like, oh my God, it just took him a long time to get there. It happens. So if you want the hopeful, some players do take a little bit longer to develop. And let's be honest, he's not exactly had an easy developmental curve here.
That's the main caveat to add there too.
Between
is
COVID and whatever.
The loss of development time because of COVID, also coming into a circumstance that is unusual for a first overall draft pick, in that the Rangers were not a bottom of the league team when they drafted him, that they had players in their top 6 that were pretty locked into those positions. All of that can simultaneously be true. But expectations do matter. And I don't think that you can just wash that away when the guy was like, it wasn't even disputed that he was the first overall pick that year. It was who gets to pick first to take Alexis Lafrenière. And he has just not been that guy. It's no different than we're pegging so much of the Trocheck conversation on the idea of what the return would be based on that Minnesota offer that we know. It's an expectations game. If that is the baseline expectation, which would have been disappointing by our lights, anything better than that is an improvement, and anything worse than that is catastrophic. You just, I have to just side somewhat with the people who are saying that you do have to compare it to what the expectations were, that he has just not been the guy as advertised when the Rangers got him. Again, that does not mean that he's a useless hockey player. Like, even in the throes of, I'm just kind of done with Alexis Lafrenière. Look, I'm hopeful that what we're seeing is the dawn of a new era for Alexis Lafrenière, and I'm going to change a lot of my opinions on that. But I just don't think that gets washed away easily. That is what was promised, and I do think you have to factor that in. If you're going to make a compelling, let me just put it this way. If you're going to make a compelling case for the value of Alexis Lafrenière, you have to start by acknowledging that he has not met expectations.
Sure.
And you cannot just hand wave it away and be like, I don't get why people are so upset that you've still got a top 6 winger who plays a good defensive game, who plays a good 200-foot game, who isn't producing points at the level that he was advertised, but still is a decent player, and his value would never be lower if you trade. All of that is fine. You just don't get to hand wave the first part of it away. You have to acknowledge that is reality before you get to making the case that he is still a useful hockey player, and it would make no sense to just dump him for nothing.
Right. Don't let perfection get in the way of a really valuable player, is really what it rolls down to. I fully agree with you. You can't just wash it away. But that doesn't, it is overtaken the conversation, quite frankly. And look, again, Lafrenière could go the next 20 games without scoring a single point, and it wouldn't necessarily shock me with the way things have been. He's another one in the you need to prove me right rather than prove me wrong category, just like Chris Drury, where I bought a lot of Alexis Lafrenière stock, and I'm holding it right now because there's no point in selling it. It's worth nothing. But I've been really encouraged by what I've seen. And if this gets him a little bit more confidence, so be it. Because I think this is the other thing, just in terms of the way that people come to these valuations, the amount of people, including people who cover this team, that are shitting on Liam Greentree because he's not the return that you were expecting for Artemi Panarin, Liam Greentree is not a bad prospect because Artemi Panarin should have brought back more. Even though we're ignoring the fact that he had a
No,
no
he
movement
shouldn't have.
clause,
Like,
and you know what that's worth.
I'm fucking sorry. I am so incredibly exhausted with this, and people who are apparently, I get it. I loved Artemi Panarin too. If you are just willing to excise the part of your brain, the rational part of it that needs to process that Artemi Panarin was a guy with a full no movement clause who could pick where he was going to go, and at the end of the day, only said one team that he was willing to accept a trade to, and you are not able to process that, if you are not able to factor that in to how you feel about the situation, I really honestly do not know how to help you. I really do not know what to say. I agree that, like, in a world where you have Vincent Trocheck level trade protection for Artemi Panarin, yes, what they got in return for him would not be acceptable. But that's not the circumstance. You can hate that he is gone. You can hate the way that it ended. You can wish it would have brought back more. But I cannot believe that people are doing this still and seemingly just wanting to forget about the part that his value was going to be reduced because he could determine where he went, and at the end of the day only wanted one place. I do not understand why people are still doing this.
Yeah, the no movement clause thing is the thing. I don't know what to tell you. I just don't. If you want to make the argument that Chris Drury maybe should have had a better relationship, here, I don't even think that would have mattered.
I don't even
at
think
the
that
end of the
that
day.
it matters.
I don't. I just
Like, you're basically what you're asking for here is for the Kings to do what Bill Guerin was asking Chris Drury to do for him.
correct,
Right? To, like, do him a favor for no good goddamn reason, for no obvious reason, in a situation where you just do not have the kind of leverage that you would want. You're just asking for another GM to do you a favor, and they ain't going to throw you a life raft, and they shouldn't.
for no reason. But that's like Liam Greentree's may be in the NHL next year. I'm not telling you he's going to be
like
the
a
next
legit
coming.
guy.
He's not a nothing prospect. So I think on the other level, we got to just I just want everybody to be a little bit more realistic. That's all. Myself included. Let's just be a little bit more realistic.
Fair enough.
Eric, why is Urho Vakanainen playing in hockey games in the year of our Lord 2026?
Best answer I can give you is that nothing matters.
That's all the more reason, though. Play Iorio. Play fucking Scott Morrow. Because nothing matters.
I'll throw back at you part of the Alexis Lafrenière conversation and what you mentioned about Gabe Perreault as well. Do you think it is better for Scott Morrow, especially now? And I'm not even going to contest your point that for the time that Adam Fox was out, he should have been running the point on the power play. I agree with you on that. We're past that point in time. Okay. Is it just better for him right now to be running the top power play in Hartford and to be skating first pair minutes and being the guy? And as we talked about last week, working on his defensive game in a much more low leverage situation than he would in the NHL. I am sympathetic to your points about Morrow, but I think the biggest argument for why Urho Vakanainen is playing is expressly because you don't give a shit about him. Like, if I'm trying to read the best possible read of the situation with Morrow, it's because you do give a shit about who that player might be, that you may want him in the position that he's in right now, playing first pair minutes and top power play minutes with Hartford, rather than giving him Urho Vakanainen's forgettable third pair minutes in NHL games that absolutely don't matter. I think there's an argument to make about playing him against NHL competition and having him work out some things there. But as we were just saying, with like giving Perreault some chance to be the guy in Hartford, I think helped him. I think it would have helped Alexis Lafrenière to give him an opportunity in the AHL, even for just a season, to be the guy before stepping into a different reduced role in the National Hockey League. That's the best argument that I can make for it. Urho Vakanainen is just not a particularly good hockey player, and I don't ever really need to see him on the ice again. But that's the best argument I can make for it.
Just, yeah, there's no way to have that conversation without me going back to like, why did we not do the thing? He's playing 2 defensemen on their offhand to get Urho Vakanainen into the lineup. We couldn't do this for Morrow. I agree with you. The reason you send Morrow down is for exactly what you said, because you actually care about his development, give him these opportunities. I just, if we're all of the minds that the one thing Scott Morrow is really good at is the offense, why were you having Vladislav Gavrikov run the fucking power play? Especially when the games didn't matter. That's all. That's my take on that. Eric, we're an hour and 5 minutes in, or an hour and 5 minutes. I'm not stupid. An hour and 5 minutes into this, we should probably get to some questions, right?
Well, those things are not necessarily connected.
Can you run the questions? Because I am
Yes.
hosting the internet on my...
Okay. Yes, I can do that for you. We will start with ye old scribe. What is in the water in Buffalo, and how can we get a jug of it? That game against Tampa was insanity. Absolute, complete, and total insanity. Please inject an entire playoff series worth of that into my veins.
So can I ask a question about this, actually? First of all, I made a tweet that Sam Carrick belonged in Buffalo when there were 48 people in the penalty box. 1,000 likes. People love Sam Carrick in Buffalo. To go back to my previous point, if Buffalo loses in 7 games in the first round of the playoffs, you really think they're not having a conversation internally about Vincent Trocheck? Seriously.
Look,
there's going to be options there, I promise you.
if Vincent Trocheck being held back from being traded at this deadline gets an above average return from the Buffalo Sabres and simultaneously thaws the Cold War between Buffalo and the Rangers, that would be extraordinary. That really would be extraordinary. I have no idea what is going on in Buffalo other than I think it is.
It took 14 years to get there, so let's
Yeah,
not. I don't know if you
it took-
want what's in the water, to be honest with you.
Well, you want what's in the water right now.
Now,
You
correct,
obviously
not what
do
led
not
up to
want
it.
what has been in the water
Yeah.
previously. I think I'm trying to find it here. Yeah, I may have read this last week, but like some of the players who got traded at the deadline the last season, the Sabres made the playoffs. Jason Arnott, Dustin Penner, Sergei Samsonov, Frederick Modine, Brian McCabe, Corey Stillman, Alex
Wasn't
Kovalev
on the list?
Yeah, Kovalev. So, yeah, you have gone through a lot of suffering there. I think part of it is this has always been a team that was playing less than the sum of its parts, at least for the last like season or two. Like there are really good pieces on the Buffalo Sabres. Guys that I would be happy to, like, I would love a Tage Thompson. The idea that they might have added Robert Thomas from the Blues too was going to be like just absolutely insane. Or Colton Parayko. I had to send this to my friends who are Blues fans, that Colton Parayko, when presented with this trade offer, decided to pass the first time he has decided to pass in his entire National Hockey League career. I thought that was pretty funny.
To stay on the bad Blues, like that's a wild.
I mean, I can get not wanting to go to Buffalo, right? Like I can get not wanting to go to Buffalo. Maybe one of the best arguments for firing Chris Drury is it seems like firing the GM was the trigger for this team turning it around. Like all they needed was a little Jarmo Kekalainen in their lives, and all of a sudden there might as well be palm trees in Buffalo. I don't know what's going on there. This is an absolute heater, but I would take an entire playoff series of what we just saw against Tampa Bay. That was
it's a lot of fun watching it as a innocent bystander in a way. Like you're innocent to all this. Doesn't matter to you. But yeah, I was a huge fan of that game. That would be a great playoff series. And again, you don't know who you can kind of trick. Teams are going to get a little hairy if they lose and they feel like they got something. Just saying.
Also from Yield Scribe, long term, what's more important? The Rangers losing as many games as they can to get the best draft pick possible, or the Rangers winning as many games as they can while the youth / Lafrenière develop?
They're not mutually exclusive. You can lose as many games. You can lose every game from here on out. And Gabe Perreault, Lafrenière, Scott Morrow, Ilorio, if he, or I should say Ilorio and then Scott Morrow if he gets into the lineup.
Iorio. You're adding an L in there that does not exist.
The reason it confuses me, the capital I just read as an L at the start of his name. And then I just add an L somewhere because my brain knows it's not an L and it's an I. Iorio.
I think it's Iorio. I think it's a long I,
whatever,
not a short I.
It's fine. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I guess it does matter. But
it kind of does, but yeah.
You can lose every game and still have
good development.
Get something out of it. It's not ideal, but it's much more important for the Rangers to get a really good draft pick out of this than it is for the Rangers to have a feel-good end of the year. They win a bunch of games and they still miss the playoffs and then they're picking 10th. Not that can't happen.
We're recording this before the game against Calgary on Tuesday. It would be really helpful to lose that game.
Oh, yeah, this is a must-lose for the tank. No question about it. Must lose.
Yeah. I would say that I think you said this in your game notes. Or I read it somewhere this morning.
Could have been
that
brilliant.
The worst case scenario is games that the Rangers win like 3-2, where Igor makes 50 saves. That is not good because you're getting neither development and you're getting points. You're going if guys are developing, you're going to have games against a poverty franchise like the Philadelphia Flyers that you are going to posterize them 6-2 like they did on Monday night. That's okay. But yeah, I mean, the biggest concern, and this is part of too where the lottery part of it comes in and is a benefit, right? Is you can come in 4th or 5th and you can end up picking 1st overall. It is absolutely possible. So, you want both of those things, and you're probably going to get, the losing can happen while you're having player development. That's the ideal circumstance. But also, to your point, you're going to have games where you have the best goaltender in the National Hockey League in the net, and you're going to steal wins because of that, even if they're not going to be enough and too and far infrequent and far in between to really matter. So
yeah, the losses are more important at this stage.
Particularly to teams that you're competing with at the bottom of the NHL standings.
Like Calgary. Must lose. Must lose.
Tom 29. Do you really think the whiskey versus milk comment was aimed at Fox, or was it really meant for Kid Rock and RFK Jr.? Not a political podcast, but that's funny. State of hockey. Even if they trade the likes of Trocheck, Schneider, etc., and potentially move on from Zib or Fox, who could they realistically sign with all this cap space that will bring them back into contention? It's one thing to say the Miller and Zibanejad contracts suck, but it seems there's no one out there to spend money on anyways. Somebody in the banner Slack made the point that it is just the most Rangers shit of all time. I think it was Chris, to have the cap going up at the rate that it is looking to go up in the next couple of years and to have absolutely nobody in free agency to spend that money on. It's just the most Rangers shit of all time. All you're hoping for at this point
is Matthews and
Matthews
McDavid
or
in
McDavid.
2 years.
Right. And you're just playing again, just like with the Trocheck situation, right? You've just punted on what you were really hoping was going to happen a little further down the road. Yep, those guys are going to be 2 years older, but they are Austin Matthews and they are Connor McDavid. And I think you have to say that it's going the way in both of those places that you would want it to go if you're a Rangers fan.
For sure.
I have to imagine McDavid is losing his mind about what Edmonton did and did not do at the deadline. And
I have no idea how I'm shocked he signed that contract in the first place, and I get it. He did it to kind of avoid that was last year, right? So he's in the first year of that 2-year contract right now. He did it to avoid some of the full.
no,
How
it's
do you
because
not
he would have
walk
been
into
a
your
free agent this upcoming season. So he's got 2 more seasons
so
in
yeah, he did it.
Edmonton.
So like, oh, that's right. He did it earlier this year. Like I would have waited. I know he didn't want it to be a distraction for the year. That this is why you fucking wait, my dude, because this is stupid.
And at the rate it's going in Toronto as well, I mean, that is a bad team that I don't know when they're going to get good again. They are
4D
also in a
chess.
bad place. We talked about this last week. And like they also seem, certain people in Leafs media world seem very dedicated after their rip-roaring success of drumming Mitch Marner out of town, now seem dedicated to the project of drumming Austin Matthews out of town.
Let him do
I
it.
think it's fucking stupid, but by all means, Steve Dangle, go for it. I really want Austin Matthews out of there, and I would love him on the Rangers. So by all means, keep losing your shit. It's all that you're known for.
It is. It would be 4D chess for Chris Drury to put together the team that wins the gold medal, that then drives Austin Matthews to the New York
And
Rangers.
Brady
Let's
Tkachuk,
do it.
possibly. I
I
mean,
know,
like
it's-
I
listen-
don't know how well things are going to be going
In
on in
Ottawa.
Ottawa there either. There you go. Related to that, Rangers fan born after 1994, Matthews asks out of Toronto, what is the most that you would give up for him? What is a realistic offer? Maybe Lafrenière and our firsts. I think you're sending a lot of draft capital to Toronto if you're making it. See, this is where you have to temper what we were just talking about, right? Because both of those franchises cannot lose that player for nothing.
Right. It's
They're
the Vincent
going,
Trocheck thing over and over again.
yeah, they cannot lose that player for nothing, especially considering that it was a miracle they got anything in return for Mitch Marner the way that they handled that situation in
Right.
Toronto. So if you're the Rangers, you have to hope for one of two things. You can either be in a position to trade for either of those guys, and or those guys just really want to come to New York. I don't know about the last part. And the problem is that the first part too is dicey because you don't have a ton in the way of assets.
Yeah, the Rangers don't have anything.
I certainly do not think that Lafrenière and firsts gets it done. You're sending Gabe Perreault. Like that is where the conversation starts, and it's not even close to where it ends.
Well, the only way Schneider and a first works is if this drags out into next year, and Austin Matthews is like the only place I'm signing a contract extension is New York.
Yeah, the same reason that people are losing their shit about Liam Greentree as the major part of return for Artemi Panarin would be to the Rangers' benefit in the circumstance you just laid out there. Like, I'm sorry, this is how no movement clauses work.
Correct.
But I think, it's going to be more in almost any conceivable reality than Lafrenière and a handful of first-round picks.
And again, Matthews, the Leafs are going to have that conversation about Matthews one way or another. They're either having it this summer so that they're not going into next year with this hanging over the team's head, or they're having it next year, leading up to the trade deadline. Like neither of those are good options for Toronto. So,
Statesboro Blueshirt CT. Why do hockey players have this propensity to stay with their current team when they hit free agency? Other sports are far more mercenary. What is it in hockey culture that's breeding this? Thinking out loud, is it demographics? To generalize, hockey players may come from more affluent backgrounds than basketball or football. Maybe having never had to worry about money, they value other things more. I'd be really curious to hear what everybody else thinks. Joe, what do you think?
I think some of it is the culture. The hockey culture is weird. I think there's just this sense of loyalty that exists. We've talked about this before with basketball. There's so few players on a basketball team that LeBron James in the height of his powers could go pretty much to any team and make them an instantaneous finals contender. No questions asked. And while Connor McDavid is the best player in the NHL and it's not even close, if you added him to the Rangers right now, they'd be better. I don't know if they'd be an instant Stanley Cup contender. So I think that matters with the NFL simply because it's just, or the NBA, simply because guys move around. They see an opportunity. Trades happen quite a bit more frequently. I do think it's because of how few players are on each team. NFL contracts are short, not guaranteed, and the length of time that players have to actually extract their revenue, you're going for the bag over anything else. You're just only players that are in the upper, like Patrick Mahomes, right? The elite of the elite. Yeah, they could be picky with where they want to go and what they want to do. And those guys don't move very often because they're making a shitload of money. Why should they? MLB, another example. You can get signed to a fucking 15-year contract in baseball. Where are you going? Like, there's no... One of the things that the NBA did right that I'm actually really surprised the NHL has not done, and maybe they address this in the next, labor contract. 5-year contracts in the National Basketball League is the max, right? That's the max contract you can sign somebody to.
Not an NBA guy, but I think that's right.
Neither am I. So, like, that to me would be a really good way to kind of create just chaos in a way and get guys to move around a little bit more. I think there's also this just sort of culture in the NBA where, again, because star players are so critical to the process, you do whatever you can to make them happy, and sometimes that means you're just making trades in the middle of the year. There was a joke about this, and I don't remember what the NHL piece was, but it was basically like trades never happen. And then in the National Basketball Association, it's like my star player looked grumpy at breakfast this morning, so we just traded 17 people to bring somebody that he played with college in. Like, that's a real thing. But that's, to me, there's fewer players in the NBA. There's a little bit less parity in that regard, and guys jump around for a variety of reasons, but mainly because there's only 10 guys on a basketball team. Football, you're just going for value. I think the average career length in football is 2.5 years or 3 years. Like,
the center for the Chicago Bears just retired at 27.
Yeah, like, you're making whatever money you can. You're just doing it. It's a dangerous game. And then baseball, contracts are too long, quite frankly, for anybody to move around.
I think one of the key components of this is, in a lot of ways, hockey players are the most small c conservative of all of the professional athletes out there. I don't mean that politically. I just kind of mean that in life approach. And it is the nature of the team and it being a team sport. Back to the whole point about Henrik Lundqvist that we were making earlier. They're like, how much can you hold it against him, especially since it is regularly insisted to us that if you win games because your goaltender is your best player, that doesn't really count. How much can you hold it against him that the team itself did not win a team championship? It's the most team-oriented, I think, of any of the four major professional sporting leagues. Your point about the NBA really just being a collection of like 5 or 6 individual incredible players is true. Baseball, while you're out, I'm not going to give you the whole Robert De Niro as Al Capone's speech from The Untouchables here. But, you're standing at the plate. It's the time for individual achievement. Out in the field, you're part of a team. But it is broken up in that way. And football in that sense is probably the closest in terms of like the team sport nature. But even still, like offense and defense are on the team field at separate times. There are, completely different defined roles. Like at any given time, Urho Vakanainen could score 3 goals tonight against the Calgary Flames. It's unlikely, but it is possible. It's not possible to throw touchdown passes to your linemen except in specific formations that you have lined up in that make that possible. So it's just, I think, different. And as a result of that, those guys also being, I just think, small c conservative in life approach are just more desirous of like, these are the guys that I play with. You bond, I think, possibly as much, if not more, with your teammates. I think we see this just in the nature of the sport, in how we cover it. And you want to stick around with those guys. It takes sometimes things that are extraordinary and kind of out of your power. Like, I'm sure Austin Matthews, if had his druthers, would want to stay a Toronto Maple Leaf for the rest of his career. Things are not developing along those lines for him, not entirely of his fault either. So I think that is it. There are definitely things with the way that the league kind of handles things, with the way that the CBA is, that don't make this any easier to get free agents to market. But I think it's a lot about the way that the players are. Now, there's always more free agency in the past. I think there's, it would be really great to get somebody on here who's an expert in the collective bargaining agreement, and especially has knowledge of previous collective bargaining agreements, to explain like what has changed over time that has created the circumstances as they exist now. I think that would be a really interesting conversation to have, because I don't know all of the answers there. But I have to think the CBA plays a part in it as well. But I think the hockey culture part of it, the nature of hockey teams, is just more powerful. Chip, he asks, for the longest time we were searching for what a reasonable trade comp for Trocheck would be. Guys' age with term and his ability are not often traded. Is the Nazem Kadri trade now a good baseline? Kadri was traded along with a 4th-round pick, 20% salary retention, for a solid NHL player on an expiring contract, a mid-tier prospect in Max Curran, a 1st and a 2nd. Kadri's older than Trocheck, but the retention gives them an equal cap hit over the next 3 years. Did Kadri have trade protection? I have to think he probably did.
I think he might have, but I don't think it was a no movement clause.
Let's look here. Nazem
I think another thing to
Kadri.
bring up here, look, the Islanders did some stupid shit. The Luke Schenn trade was stupid. Like, they've made
13-team no trade list for Nazem Kadri.
They've made some control. And I saw a lot of people pointing that out. Like, oh, the offers obviously had to be really good for Vincent Trocheck. No, they don't. Like, they didn't. Just because Luke Schenn the Islanders offered that deal for Luke Schenn does not mean that they had that deal on the table for Vincent Trocheck or anything of the sort.
And I do think it means something that the team that acquired Kadri here is a team that previously had him and won a Stanley Cup when they had him. Like, there are some X factors involved in all of that as well, in terms of the team really desiring the player based on prior knowledge, and the player probably really liking the idea of going to the team, because it was apparently like off the table that Kadri was not going to be traded, and then all of a sudden you get this trade. Again, the problem with this is it's all relative. I don't know that I would use that as a benchmark, because I think that the players are too different in this sense. I don't know that I would love that as a return. I think you probably could and should get more than that as a return for Trocheck than what Calgary got for Nazem Kadri. Kyle Schnitzer, given the fact that most of our current players and recent acquisitions have skating issues, how do we gaslight Drury and Dolan into hiring an elite skating coach? For this rebuild to work, they're going to have to improve the Fisher-Price development program that's currently in place. This is one of the biggest concerns that I actually have, is player development, which has just not been good for a long time. There was Chris is going to have a piece that will go up tomorrow, Wednesday, on the 2 newest prospects that the Rangers acquired at the deadline. I did see one of the knocks on what is his name that was acquired, who's currently a teammate of Aspinall, Aiden Thompson, or no, it's Battaglia. That I believe is just like also not a great skater. Look,
you're getting anything you can for Brendan Othman. We didn't even talk about Brendan Othman. The trade happened when we were done.
After, it was later in the evening. Announced later in the evening.
Yeah, what is like,
good for everybody.
Yes, Othman needs to get out of here too.
Yeah, so getting anything in return there. Maybe he's a bottom 6 guy, the Battaglia who they got in return there. Again, the knock being he's not a great skater. You do want those guys to improve their skating ability. We would like to see them acquire players who are better skaters. But I think this is one of the biggest questions that I have about the future of this team, has to do with player development.
Yeah, it's fine. It's an issue that's been an issue for so long that it's really surprising the Rangers haven't made a decision to be a little bit more focused on it. I don't understand how they don't see this as a priority for them. Barbara Underhill, that was her name, right? Was the figure skater coach that was working with the Rangers for a period of time back in the day. Like Brian Boyle was working with her, I remember. I think
I don't remember
Charlie
the
will
name,
correct me
but
if I'm wrong there. Those are the types of things that the Rangers should be very, very focused on this. Specifically because Liam Greentree is another one who, like, they could use a little bit more skating out of him. And I just think that for the Rangers in general, this has been such a priority that's been ignored and something that has hurt them routinely, time and time again. Why is this not something you're focusing on?
Agreed.
That's all. It's easy.
Agreed.
Hire somebody.
Steve M., what now? The 1 to 2 year retool is now a 6 to 18 month retool since they passed on doing anything of value for the team for the first 6 months. Maybe we should spend some time next week because I don't want to get into it right now on we are in a rebuild.
Yeah, this is a full
It's
rebuild.
not a retool. It's a rebuild. Maybe we unpack that more next week, but we hear your questions, Steve. With the way that Yarrow, again, is it Chemlash? This is going to drive me nuts.
There's no C in it at all.
There is a C at the beginning.
Yeah, but there's no C in the way that you say it.
Yeah, it's weird. Has played, and the acquisition of Ty Cartier and his own inability to bring anything to the ice. Have we seen the end of Matt Rempe?
It's an interesting question. If the Rangers want to be serious about being an actual hockey team, unless they can return the Matt Rempe of old to me, probably. I also think, for reasons I can't understand, the Rangers played Matt Rempe for a good chunk of this year injured, which makes no sense. And that doesn't help the situation either. So, Matt Rempe is a fun, vibey fourth liner. Like, what?
Yes, he's a fourth liner. We talked about this. I think he can be an effective fourth liner. I am fine if this spells the end of Matt Rempe. I am more willing to defend him than certain people. Like, I know Snark has had it out for him from the beginning. I'm more willing to defend him, but there are definitely better players out there. I think Cartier has actually been a really good waiver wire pickup. Like, he seems to be a very decent acquisition.
Drury's done a really good job.
The waiver wire stuff has been good. I agree.
Iorio, right? Or Iorio? Yeah. Is that what?
Iorio, I think.
And him have been actually solid pickups. Not going to change your life. And Kaliev, even though he didn't work out, those are the types of risks the Rangers should be taking.
Sure.
In this regard. So I will give Drury his flowers there that he's making decisions I would like to see on the waiver wire.
Rangers fan born after 1994. I like to pick a team to root for that I want to win it all when the Rangers are out. Mine right now is the Sabres and the Ducks. Joe, do you pick anyone to root for if the Rangers are not good?
I won't even watch the playoffs.
Really?
I'll throw a game on if it's on, or if there's a series. Like, if the Lightning play the Sabres, I'm watching that series.
Yeah, that's worth it. Yeah.
But I don't... it's more... I've had this conversation before on the show. The Rangers are the only team I lose sleep over. My obsession with them is such that I don't have room for anyone else. Like, I'll watch the Yankees, whatever. I'll watch the Giants at pretty much every football game. I don't enjoy watching other people have fun in hockey.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I don't need to watch.
I have more of a inverse ranking of what teams I do not want to win see a championship.
Correct. Yes.
And I will inevitably watch the Stanley Cup final. I want to see the Stanley Cup final because usually it's good, entertaining hockey. So I will end up watching it. Rangers fan born after 1994. The Capitals traded their best D-man of all time in their franchise in the middle of the night with no one knowing and made some teammates upset. Why do people shit on Drury for last year when stuff like this happens so often?
Because it's easy. It's low-hanging fruit. Like, the Karlsson situation is interesting to me because it was the dead of night piece that's kind of crazy to me. That, like, he had no idea it was coming. he got traded. And again, we were talking about Washington a couple of years ago as a team that seemed on the up and up. I think those thoughts have pretty much disappeared. I think that people get attached to, I don't know if it's easy. There are things that should and shouldn't happen, right? You shouldn't, I'm putting quotations around this for those of you that are watching on video, you see that. You shouldn't trade your best players like that. You should remember, Glenn Sather called Brian Leach on his birthday, I believe. Like Mark Messier answered the phone. He was like, yo, put Leach on. Hey, you're traded. Guys deserve a little bit more respect than that, which goes back to if Barclay Goodrow being removed from the locker room was such an nuclear explosion, probably not a good locker room. Like, that team probably wasn't going to win anything anyway, and didn't, by the way. I don't know. My patience for this is, it would be funny if it wasn't happening to me.
Yeah.
Just like Vincent Trocheck taking
Fair
a picture
enough.
with the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah.
Like, it would be funny if it wasn't happening to me, but it is happening to me, so I can't make fun of Washington for this. It's not funny for me. That's all.
Yeah, I loath as I am to say anything positive about Tom Wilson. Basically, his response was like, yeah, this sucks, but, you move on. Like, the inability of so many of the players on the Rangers last year to deal with it in that way.
Business.
Yeah, it's, there's a lot of credibility to the country club indictment of the Rangers, that these players felt exceptionally entitled. And in a sense, the cost of breaking that may be more than I ever really wanted to bear, and we're going through that right now. But something needed to be broken there. I'm just sorry. Like, the way that the Capitals have seemingly coped better with losing, yes, at the end of his career, John Carlson, than the Rangers did with Barclay Goodrow. It just is. I would laugh at it with you if it weren't happening to me. But this is, again, why I just come back to, I am more welcoming of the indictment of Chris Drury now than I ever have been. I am never letting the players off the hook for their role in what happened last year. And you're never going to get me to be just, there very much is we see this in a lot of areas of life. You got to pick a side, and not just pick a side. You have to pick a side and defend it relentlessly in a way that almost always guarantees defending it dishonestly. I'm not on either of the sides here. But while I have more criticisms of Drury than I ever have, the people who are, it's all Chris Drury. He handled it terribly. He broke up a really good locker room, which I agree with you. I don't think there was evidence that it was a really good locker room. I'm sorry, I cannot forgive a lot of the players for not being more professional in the way that they handled those things last year. I know I'm sure, in a sense, like, if you had somebody that you worked with who you really liked and the company downsized and they got let go, that sucks. It absolutely does. I'm not going to show up the next day and just be like, I'm just going to sit in front of my computer for 8 hours and do absolutely nothing because I'm upset that this guy got let go. That's not a serious thing to do. And the players did not deal with it in a serious way. And I think that's in a lot of ways unforgivable. And to the extent that it is forgivable, they've got a long road to go, the ones who are remaining from that, to work their way back. That's all the questions.
Although Mika Zibanejad, I mentioned in my notes today, sort of working his way back into my good graces.
Look, I think Mika's reemergence as, the guy who's almost undoubtedly going to win the Stephen McDonald Extra Effort Award, because I don't know who else you're going to give it to. And
Sam Carrick would have won.
Sam Carrick would have won. I agree with you. Actually playing well and doing mentory things for Gabe Perreault. This is great. Like, this is legitimately is great, considering that I just do not think there is a possibility that he is leaving this team until perhaps maybe like the last year or two of his contract. I just don't think he if he's sticking it out through all this, I just don't see what is going to compel him to be like, no, I really want to go. I think he really likes New York. I think he really likes where he is, even if things aren't going great. Good for him for making the best of a bad situation here. But man, like there's time will help dissipate the stink of last year, but it's I still catch a whiff of it every once in a while.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for listening. Another hour, 40 minutes for you guys. You guys are lucky. You should subscribe to Blueshirt Banter. Become a member. $85 a year get you all your ad-free access to Blueshirt Banter and the New York Rangers. $40 a year get you access to the Discord. You can ask questions in the question thread that Eric puts up every single week. BlueshirtBanter.com, Facebook.com/BlueshirtBanter, Twitter.com/BlueshirtBanter, YouTube.com/BlueshirtBanter, BlueshirtBanter.com/BlueshirtBanter. I don't think that brings them as a joke. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for listening. We will see you next week. Bye for now.